Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78 from the West Town neighborhood. I'm outside the Intuit Art Museum, just reopened, and look at that artwork. Bob Faust, the artist who has blended these buildings together. I'm going to talk to the CEO, Deborah Carr, about this space and a fantastic story about a Chicago artist you've probably never heard of, but probably the most famous Chicago artist you never heard of. So that is the story from the 78 out here in the West Town neighborhood. Let's go inside. All right, so inside the front gallery space here at the Intuit Art Museum, I'm here with Deb Carr. How are you? CEO and the whole thing.
I'm really excited. We're so pleased to be reopening the museum. It was closed for 20 months, $10 million renovation, and here we are in our first gallery ever dedicated to our permanent collection.
Oh, fantastic. So this is something new that people didn't see before, right?
Occasionally we would have some of the works from our permanent collection in a special exhibition, but this is the first time that we've been able to showcase that collection on an ongoing basis. We're pleased to be highlighting some of our best works in this first exhibition of our collection, but we'll rotate additional works in through this gallery space as time goes on.
So what makes this worthy of permanent exhibition space?
Well, you know, I think that anytime that you go to an art museum, you often see the permanent collection and something becomes your new favorite. An easy one is to think about the Surratt at the Art Institute.
Sure.
I want people to come in, see this work, and adopt a new favorite so that when they come back with their friends from out of town, they come back and see their friend over and over again. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to establish that same sort of familiarity with our permanent collection with our guests here in Chicago.
And your art museum, a little bit different than others. Why don't you explain a little bit of what makes your museum the museum that it is?
Absolutely. We're one of the few museums in the world that is dedicated to solely exhibiting works by self-taught, what was once called outsider artists. So this is all work made by people
my
who
kind
were
of people.
my
kind of people.
Yeah, people that were untrained. They couldn't or didn't know that art school might be an option because of socioeconomic reasons or geographic reasons. They had to go to work and raise money and take care of their families or whatever. So, but the interesting thing is, despite the fact that they didn't go to art school, they felt so compelled to make art that reflects their lived experience or their personal vision that they made art anyway. And they made incredible art.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to be shining a spotlight on that here with this gallery. The other thing that you may not know is that Chicago is recognized kind of around the world as the first place in the United States to embrace this kind of art as a legitimate genre of art.
I did not know that.
So Chicago is really considered to be a highlight space for this kind of work. It's why Intuit is here. But I know that many people in Chicago don't even realize that, aren't familiar with this art, maybe are not familiar with our museum. And this reopening of an expanded museum is our chance to really put a spotlight on the work that we're doing here and engage more people from Chicago and beyond to come here and see this work.
Absolutely. And before we walk out of this space here, I want to recognize all the beautiful artwork in here, but what is the piece behind you? It's beautiful.
This is an incredible piece by a living artist who's based in New Jersey, Kevin Sampson. This piece is called Port Wine Stain. It's a wonderful assemblage of found objects. A lot of the artists that we show don't have access to expensive art supplies, so they make with whatever's to hand. But this is actually Kevin Sampson's envision of a slave ship. So this is a very dramatic piece. It's also a very beautiful piece. It's a very impactful piece, and I love it. I think it's an amazing piece to have in our collection.
Yeah, it was calling to me the moment I walked in here before we even got started. It is absolutely beautiful. And I would like to end on this portion, on this particular piece here.
That's a great choice. This is a work by Wesley Willis. Wesley was a Chicago artist, used to walk the streets of Chicago on the bridges, in the buildings, with a big sheaf of poster board tucked under his arm. He would stop and do these really fine, almost architectural drawings of the city of Chicago and the streets of Chicago. He even was so well recognized that down at the Illinois Institute of Technology, for a while they had a little office space for him to come in and work out of that space. But what's really special about this particular work is this is our intersection. This is Chicago and Milwaukee and Ogden Avenues where they come together, and these are our buildings in the drawing before the CVS, before some of the other things came in. And here's the matchbox. Some people may be familiar with that. Look at that.
And of course, he's got his John Hancock right there and says it. 1989. Man, I remember growing up hearing that name all the time, reading the Chicago Reader, and then Time Out Chicago, and then all the things.
His work is all over the city in private collections, in interesting spaces, bars, and Westtown Chamber of Commerce. His work is really beloved by Chicago.
So this space is one of the newer spaces. I just want to back up here a little bit, and then we're going to go upstairs, right?
We are. This space was part of the old museum experience, but before it was covered in drywall. It was a white box, as many museums are, and one of the things we did throughout our renovation was take down all that drywall, expose the brick in this 150-year-old building, and we still wanted to provide the right surface that we need to display the art, so we have these white art hanging walls. But I really love the juxtaposition of seeing the bones of this historic building up against this beautiful art that comes from a very special place.
Absolutely, and one would argue that these old buildings are art themselves from an era that doesn't exist anymore.
Perfect. There are so many places in Chicago where the buildings have come down and we haven't been able to elevate the historic buildings, and I'm really proud of the work that our team did here to keep this historic building in place.
Absolutely. So upward and onward, yes?
Upward and onward.
Where are we heading to?
We're going up to the second floor. This is part of the expansion. We had purchased the second floor, but we weren't able to operationalize it because it wasn't accessible. And one of the key things that we have done through this expansion is to make the building fully accessible. So now there's a ramp that takes you into the first floor so that everyone can have access to the building. We have a passenger elevator. We have all gender restrooms. We have all the facilities that we need to make sure that this building is fully accessible. And now here is the second floor.
We're greeted right away by beautiful artwork.
Yeah, isn't this incredible? There's an artist over here.
Yeah, let's go. You're driving the bus. I'm just riding along here.
This entire exhibition is focused on artists who migrated or immigrated to Chicago. And we have artists in this exhibition, 22 artists, some of whom I was familiar with and our curators were familiar with, and some of them were new to us. Our curators talked to 200 people and learned about new artists to them. And this is some work that was new to me. It's by Jenny Saporin. Jenny was from what was Russia, part of Russia that's now Poland. And this piece in particular really speaks to me. I just think it's charming. This is a musician on his deathbed. He's surrounded by his fellow musicians making music. The angel of death is appearing through the window. There's a chorus of former lovers, maybe, that are singing him to the great beyond. His wife is mourning his loss. The cuckoo clock is telling us that his time is almost up. But then there's a little figure here, a kitty maybe, who's just going about her way, eating her meal.
Because life moves on, right?
Life moves on. One of the special things that we try to do with our labels is to minimize the curator speak, if you will, and make these also as accessible as possible. I want this museum to be the most welcoming and accessible space in Chicago, if not the country. So our labels tend to focus on what did the artists say about their work? What do their communities say about their work? And in this case, we have information from Jenny's two granddaughters who loaned us these artworks and told us stories about Jenny's family.
Wonderful, wonderful. What other types of artwork do you have up on the second floor?
So obviously we have paintings, we have sculpture, we have carved work, we have some interesting pieces that are made out of... It is a
Not
pope.
the pope.
It's a pope.
Current pope, I should say, but this is a pope.
Yeah, this is a work by Bruno Salva. We said that too, that we didn't know that we were going to be in a time of rethinking about our popes.
Was this position with the former church back there all?
Well, I will say this. There's actually a label on the wall over there talking about the fact that Milwaukee Avenue used to be known as the Polish Corridor. And St. John Cantius Church is there, the Polish American Museum is down the street, and these artists, Bruno Sova and Stanley Schwark, are both Polish. Were both Polish artists. They moved to Chicago and began a very well-recognized artistic practice once they got here.
Yeah, I mean, this is like perfectly placed, and it's also beautiful. That caught my eye. You want to walk me through that one a little bit?
More work by Bruno Sova. I think that a lot of these artists are influenced by their homelands, the stories of their homelands, the things that they maybe left behind. I think that one has something to do with Greek tragedy. But this is an incident, the slaughter of Polish officers at the forest of Katyn. Really dramatic piece. So
During World War II-ish?
it's 1981.
Oh,
is when
19
that's when it happened. It was, you're right, it is World War II when Poland was invaded by by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. I really love this because it's not just a painting, it's a painting and a bas-relief work, a carved work.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's what caught my eye about it, just because it's something that you typically don't see. At least I haven't. I've been to a lot of museums. This is a powerful piece in many ways.
It is, it is. There's a lot going on here in the details. Yeah.
Looks like we've got another fun room here with some...
We do. We have work by Drosis Skilas, an immigrant from Greece. And when people see this work, they are stunned to learn that he's a self-taught artist.
Wow.
I know the technique, the perspective, the detail, it's all pretty incredible.
It is.
Yeah, this is a really amazing piece. A couple of pieces in the exhibition are from our permanent collection, but other pieces are on loan from museums, private collectors, and family members of some of the artists who are no longer with us.
Tell me about these, I guess they're sculpture pieces here in the...
This is an Italian immigrant, Aldo Piacenza, and these are birdhouses that reflect some of the architecture and cathedrals of Italy, and he had these in his yard. Carved them and put them in his yard. And when we had this one restored, we found that there was actually a bird's nest still inside the piece. Wow. Yeah, pretty incredible. But he also made these paintings. And here you see, another timely piece, right. You see this incredible painting he did of St. Peter's.
Wonderful.
And just like Aldo Piacenza making his backyard kind of an environment for his artwork, we also have Thomas Kong. Thomas Kong was born in North Korea, made his way to South Korea, and ultimately made his way to the Rogers Park neighborhood, where he took over a store, a corner store, a corner market, and he began making collages with whatever's to hand. So packaging, the boxes that the produce came in, the wrappers from the products, and by the time he unfortunately passed away in 1983, the store was completely covered. So you'd walk up to the cash register, the back of the cash register had collages on it. The counter in front covered in collages. This part up here where in the old days we might have seen cigarette ads covered in collages. So what we're trying to do here with this installation is kind of evoke the fact that you would go to a corner store to pick up some, whatever, chips and soda, and it's covered in art. And Thomas Kong did an interesting thing. He cleared out his back room and made it sort of a pop-up exhibition space for young artists who didn't have gallery representation. So he had quite a following among young artists here in Chicago who took advantage of that space, felt like he was a kindred spirit, and I think it's really quite remarkable that he felt so compelled to make art that he was making upwards of 20 collages a day right in his store.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I love that he even grabbed something that's very true and near to Chicago, which is RC Cola. So coming from another country and picking that up and putting it into artwork speaks a lot about that particular artist.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Really great work. Over here in the corner, we have works by Derek Webster, Belize and Honduras before he came to the United States. Once again, an artist who's making work with whatever's to hand. So things, objects that he's found. Some wood turtles in front of you. Some of these incredible figures made with found pieces of wood, or even things like what looks like Mardi Gras beads and bottle caps and bits of cast off items made into a perfectly delightful figure here.
Yeah, it is absolutely beautiful. And you're right, this space just keeps going. I don't want to give everything away because we are on this wonderful journey. We also have a downstairs space you want us to check out, right?
I do. But this area over here is focusing on artists, living artists. A lot of the other artists we looked at are no longer with us. That's a piece by Piloto. He's an artist that immigrated to Chicago from Mexico. And
wow, that is stunning.
This is one of my favorite pieces in the show. It's so powerful. And he's really making a commentary on how we're not taking care of our planet.
And all the garbage.
Too much trash.
Yeah.
And if you look behind, you'll see there's a bird figure, quite stunning. Yeah, really beautiful. And this is work by Pooja Pitti, who is an immigrant from India. And she has made these little knitted pods, knitted and crocheted pods, and each one of them contains a little slip of paper where she wrote something that was meaningful to her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really quite beautiful.
It's incredible that these folks were all self-taught.
It's incredible. Yeah. These three works are artists who make work at Arts of Life, which is a progressive studio for people, artists with developmental disabilities who are making, once again, incredible, beautiful artwork.
Absolutely. Then, of course, we have the downstairs space. That's where we're going to head next?
That's where we're heading next.
Okay, well, let's go on that little journey.
Okay. We're in the Henry Darger, the Room Revealed exhibition, where we are focusing on probably Chicago's, in the world's, most famous self-taught artist. He was a janitor in a hospital, lived as a recluse most of his life, and upon his death, we found that he had painted incredible paintings that illustrate a 15,000-page novel that he wrote, In the Realms of the Unreal, which tells the story of seven princesses, seven young girls who, like Joan of Arc, mount armies to defeat the evil Glendolinian soldiers who are holding other children as slaves. And this goes on for 15,000 pages.
15,000 pages?
Single-spaced, typewritten pages. And the Vivian girls are aided by magical Blingan creatures, winged creatures with animal or human or dragon heads. And he was quite obsessed with the Chicago weather. He kept a weather journal. So we have some animations here inspired by his obsession of talking about the weather in his writings and illustrating the weather in his paintings. And even more than that, we have his room. His landlady gave us his working and studio space.
Does she know about this? Oh, no worries.
Well, but they didn't really realize what was going on, the landlord and landlady, until about the time that he was passing away. They moved him to, a senior facility and started to clean out the room, and that's when they found the writings.
So did his family know that he was doing this?
He was disengaged from his family. They had not. He had an uncle who wasn't engaged with his life, and at the end of his life, it was his landlords who were taking care of him.
That's unbelievable.
This is a recreation of his room. He lived in a rooming house on Webster in what's now, beautiful Lincoln Park neighborhood, but was a little less glamorous back then.
What years were this about?
He died in 1972.
Okay.
So he was born in 1891 and died in 1972. And this Everything in here except the radiators were objects in his room, including the fireplace tiles, the stained glass window, the chandelier. Everything came from his room. He was a bit of a hoarder, so we know that this room was had a lot of objects in it, but we think probably fairly organized objects. And over here on this side of the room, you can see this is a photograph of this wall of the room. This dresser was in a nook on this side, and on the dresser is a telephone book that has been used as a scrapbook. He taught himself to draw by tracing, so he would cut out of magazines and newspapers, comic strips, panel comics that he wanted to keep and use as source material. So we have a lot of that source material of how he taught himself to draw. Here's some coloring book pages used as scrapbooks. He was deeply Catholic. He had an ongoing relationship with God and the Catholic Church. This is a piece of collage that we pulled off the wall of the room.
Oh, so this is actual part of the wall itself with the collage on it.
Yes, yeah, we took the collage off the wall. And he saw himself as a protector of children. So a lot of the images are of children, of plants, of fires. He was quite obsessed with fires.
Makes sense. You said he was a janitor, right?
He was a janitor.
A school janitor, I would guess?
Actually, a hospital janitor.
Oh, hospital. I'm sure he saw children that were in need of
when he was a boy, he was literally sent to a place called the Asylum for Feeble-Minded Children in downstate Illinois, which was a terrible place, ultimately shut down and led to a lot of other facilities like that being closed. So he escaped as a teenager, came back to Chicago, got the janitor job. So for the rest of his life, he was telling stories about children in danger.
Wow. I'm surprised that his book hasn't been turned into like some epic odyssey on like a streaming service.
It's not very linear, and we did digitize microfiche of the book. If you go to our website, you can connect to that. It's on the Illinois State Library website, so you can look at it, read bits of it, and we're thrilled that we can share that with our guests. And here you can see some tracings he was trying out. Tracing paper. Here's a tracing he did using a carbon paper. And back here you can take a look at more of his artworks, and you can read some of the actual same editions of the books he owned. We sourced these, but these are the same editions, not the actual books from his library.
The Road to Oz. All the Oz books, huh?
And here we have where you can see that in his book he lifted whole sections from Wizard of Oz, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Alice in Wonderland, and he just changed the names of the characters. So you know he was well read in terms of telling the story of the Vivian girls fighting the evil Glendolinians.
And he has some classics down here.
Does.
Tale of Two Cities.
He does.
My God, what a fascinating! I never knew that story. Thank you for sharing that. That's
we
why I do
we had a
this.
lot of people who come because they're obsessed with Henry Darger and they want to learn more. And what we're doing with this exhibition is trying to peel back the layers and give people a little more insight into this very mysterious artist.
Absolutely. I imagine you guys are open for certain days. You want to run through your times you're open and where people can find information about you?
Sure. Our website is art.org, and we're open during the summer Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 6, third Thursdays until 8 p.m. After Labor Day will be Thursdays through Sundays, and we look forward to having Chicago guests and their friends from across the country. Interestingly, because there are so few museums that focus on this, we do get a lot of national and even international guests coming to see what's going on and to see what's going on with Henry Darger.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just fascinating. Deborah Carr, CEO of Intuit Art Museum, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Well, you can come visit Deborah and visit this works right here, tombarneychicago@gmail.com, or storiesfromthe78.com is the website. Deborah, thank you very much. Pleasure talking with you.
Great to talk with you too.